Welcome back to our roundtable discussion. We're talking events for the 2024 Strongest Man on Earth at the Shaw Classic. And next up, we have the second to last event of the contest, which will be a Circus dumbbell medley. So we'll be head-to-head here, 5 dumbbells starting with 225 pounds or 102 kilos. We'll jump up to, at the end, 285 pounds or just shy of 130 kilos for the last dumbbell. There'll be monster bells, so the bigger Circus dumbbell. And this one will be interesting. This one will be really, really interesting, especially at this point in the contest, after the guys are coming into it a little bit fatigued, and what position they're fighting in. I think we've got some phenomenal dumbbell pressers coming, without a doubt. And potentially, at this point, the points could be shaken up a little bit based on who can perform here. So what are you guys' thoughts on this one?
Well, I'm just going to say, I always found, not that the dumbbell was a great event for me, but it was probably my best overhead. But it was only good when my legs weren't too destroyed. So I always found that if I'd done a truck pull beforehand or something which really taken a lot out of my legs, my dumbbell was actually really poor. The fact that we've got a squat at the beginning of day one is going to add an element of more difficulty to this event. I think the guys that have really something we've not really touched on is 8 events over 2 days. The guys would have need to have done some form of conditioning work as well as obviously doing their heavy lifting. The guys that haven't or perhaps neglected that conditioning work to come in as strong as possible could be struggling by this point. So I think we'll see some of the guys that have perhaps kept themselves a bit fitter, kept their sort of conditioning, their recovery in a good point, could be performing. This could be a chance for some of them who have sort of done that to really claw some points off some of the guys that have perhaps not put so much effort into that side of the competition.
Yeah, that's a huge point. And the guys that have put these events together in training, constantly every week to get conditioned bodies to be able to do each event every week, that's going to be a huge factor for these guys that, maybe try to scatter these events through the week instead of trying to do them in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Because, if you try to, do dumbbell, if you're doing dumbbell every week fairly fresh, like Terry just said, to try to do this on wore out legs, second to last event, it's going to be nearly impossible for those big weights.
It's such an important factor. I had a client literally the other day, it's too many events you've got me doing on a Saturday. I'm like, well, this is the last event of the competition. We can't make it easy for you. It's not, you don't get to just choose to do it when you're fresh and ready in a contest. So yeah, absolutely. It's something that the athletes are going to have to be well prepared on. Like you say, Brian, we've got some amazing dumbbell pressers coming to this show. Mitch Hooper's amazing at dumbbell. Tom is really good. Evan Singleton, Alexei Novikov, he's incredible on dumbbell when he's in good shape. Lucas Hatton, I saw him do the dumbbell recently at the UK Arnold's, looked phenomenal, and others as well. So we have potential to see some amazing dumbbell pressing. The question mark is, how much has the power medley, the squat, the stones, all those events from day one taken out of them at this point? I was exactly like Terry. Fresh, my overhead was good because I could get that leg power into it. If my legs were beat up, I didn't have the shoulder and tricep strength of some of the guys. And really, dumbbell, it's not so much about shoulder and tricep. It is a much more explosive, much more full body movement than even the log, for instance. You get the guys that can strict press a log, but you can't strict press a 130 kilo dumbbell. You need to be explosive. Technique needs to be on point. And I think it's going to be a challenging event this deep into the contest.
I think training the dumbbell fatigued is very, very important, right? Like I think that you get a false sense of confidence if you do it fresh, where you're not in that type of state. So a lot of times, I know my training for the Arnold, for example, a lot of times you would know potentially it's the last event, right? So you've not only, and at the Arnold, the way they used to split that contest up, you would have that on day 2 after a very long break. So you're warming up 3 different times, you're waiting, So it's like trying to perform a big dumbbell lift after all of that. You need to do it when you're feeling that way, right? So that was what I could expect going in. And I think that it's very important for these guys to understand that you're not going to be fresh, right? Like you just need to understand you're not going to be fresh. So if you can have your technique on the dumbbell dialed in, that's going to be a massive factor. Some of the guys that, not that a lot of guys try to go to a more of a push press, but somebody who's very, very efficient with the push jerk on the dumbbell is going to perform better here, right? Like that's just tried and true, especially on the bigger weights when you're tired, right? You have to be able to utilize that. And then, you know, having the ability to brace and have a very, very rock solid core with this is going to be very important. So I know for me, one of the things that used to be kind of a telltale sign for me is if I got the dumbbell up on my shoulder and I would shake at all, right? Like if my body started shaking, I knew that I was fatigued a little bit, but it was trying to train to that point and then train through that a little bit, not to the point of not being smart, but know that I was fatigued enough that I might feel that on the night of when I had to do that event or day when I had to do it, and be able to work through it, right? Embrace and be able to execute. Because the other thing with this one, that there's 5 dumbbells. So again, the strategy is going to come into play based on where you're at, when you have to go, what dumbbell do you need to lift, and then how quickly do you do it? Because there's an opportunity to get in a hurry here and go too quickly, miss a lift. And we've all seen it before where somebody will miss a lift and then they panic. And then it's like, I'm going to jump right back into it. And it's that, I'm going to call it kind of like a veteran mindset of, if you miss, be willing to take a step back and take a breath for a second, gather yourself, and then get back into it, right? And instead of saying, oh crap, I just missed, I'm going to throw it back up there and maybe not take the time that's necessary. So that's I think the fascinating part on this one. And then not only who can finish it, but who can score the points in the middle, right? Like maybe that 3rd dumbbell, for example, separating to the 4th dumbbell. I think that's probably going to be pretty good points here, you know.
Yeah.
And then maybe somebody like a Novikov, this is his time to come out and shine. And, you know, I think the factor with somebody like that, or if an Evan Singleton does well or somebody, if there's some points that need to be gained in the contest, when you have other guys that may not be at the top position, but they could separate out, right? Like if you're going and say, I got to make some points up, maybe I could beat this guy. He's going to beat somebody that's close to me. I can get a point or 2 up. You know, that's the fascinating part here. So yeah, you're going to be tired. You know, you're going to be tired. You're going to be beat up. Sure, you're going to be beat up. It's, can you execute when it matters and score points, you know?
You've then got that other thing, what you were just talking about there, where say someone doesn't do particularly well on the squat, but they're a good dumbbell presser. So they go out and they do 1 rep on the squat and they go, that's enough, I'll just take my 1 point. And then they go out on the dumbbell. Those sort of people could really like start to cause people problems in terms of the points. If there's 2 or 3 of them, that can be 2 or 3 points difference that for someone who can beat those guys if someone underperforms because they're tired. So it definitely, by this point of the competition, those factors are going to come into who wins the whole show.
And I think there's a few people that are going to be like that in this competition.
Yeah.
We've got athletes that are extremely good on some events, poor on other events. They're going to decide, I'm going to save energy on these events that I'm poor at to maximize my good events and get as many points as I can. And that is going to cause the guys that are fighting for the overall win to really have to battle and be consistent throughout.
Yeah, when you have a show like this with so many events, there's so much more potential to expose weaknesses, right? So you're going to get more separation between guys where, you know, you get a 5-event show and guy gets lucky and you pick 5 of his good events, you know, he walks out and nails all 5 really well. But you get this many events and this heavy, you're really exposing all the weaknesses. So you're going to have some separation. So definitely this is one of the events that, you know, a guy like Lexi, that elbow is better. He comes in, he potentially could win this and maybe not have fared so far up until this point, but then he takes points away from Hooper or Tom or Hofthor. They need it to stay on the podium and battle for top spot in that last event. So you got, you know, it's one of those like monkey wrench events at the end where, you know, some guys can come in there and rob points from guys that need them.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing to 16 points are possible, right? So you're talking a swing of potentially 15 if you mess up, right? Like for somebody, not to say that somebody would drop, but easy to you lose 10, 8 to 10 points. Like that can happen for sure. So it's the guys that need to stay to the top, but then the guys that are phenomenal, like you said, Jerry, there's guys that could, if you picked 5 of these events for them and dropped out the other 3, they would be in a different league, right? Yep. But you give them those 3 where whether maybe it's, you know, the squat or it's the deadlift for some guys or whatever, you pull that stuff out and they're like, hey, I don't like squatting. I'm glad that's not in. My points just went up, you know? So the whole goal, I mean, at the end of the day, the whole goal is to find out who the strongest is, right? And expose weaknesses. If you have weaknesses, it's mitigating those points lost in these type of events so you can stay on top, you know. But the swing can be big, right? So you can't take your foot off the gas even if you're in a commanding position. It's like all it needs to do. And I think another one is like with this one is like Hofthor, for example, right? And Tom to some extent, because I think we've seen him have great dumbbell performances, and other times he misses one, panics, and then it's like, oh crap, now it like the wheels are falling off, you know. So it's gonna, again, and I think Tom has kind of grown a lot in the last couple years within the sport, and now, you know, he's a veteran guy. He's been around a long time at this point, right? So he's learned those lessons, and sometimes you have to learn those lessons the hard way to say, I'm not going to do that again. So, you know, you got, and this is a head-to-head, right? Like it's a head-to-head, so you got that adrenaline pumping, and if you see somebody going quicker, can you stay in your own lane, run your own race, and get the points that you need? Or do you try to go outside of your abilities in that moment with potential risk there, and maybe mess up or make a mistake or miss a rep, you know? So, you know, this is I'll tell you what, it's going to be drama, man. Like it really will at this point, because all of those factors are coming into play, and you can't call with the guys that are here. You really can't call. Yeah, you've got your top names, but again, you've got that mix of like maybe outside of the top guys, you got that mix where it could very much end up, did you do it this rep in this time? And like, did you get that next rep or not?
Well, it's so hard to predict what condition guys are going to be feeling when they get into this stage of the show. You know, when this many heavy events, this deep into the contest, you know, or, you know, a guy that normally could breeze through these, is he going to be able to go through at the same pace that he normally would, you know, fresh, or even if he was feeling 80-90%, you know, they're not going to be going into this, you know. So that's going to be, you know, when they get out there, they have something in their mind, like, why I breeze through these, you know, and all of a sudden you get into the second dumbbell and it's like, oh shit, I've got to change my strategy a little bit here, you know, and either take a slower pace or be happy with getting just maybe 3 dumbbells, you know.
And I think that factor is why at this point of the competition, it's going to suit the more experienced athletes. I think, you know, we've got some amazing newer guys that are competing, but they haven't done an 8-event competition of this level before. They haven't done, you know, they've been doing competitions, national competitions, smaller internationals, and they've been smashing it. But when you have the best guys and you feel that fatigue, you feel that pressure, the buildup of however many brutal events, you know, this isn't just 8 events. This is 8 brutal events.
Sure.
And that's something that not many of them have experienced of. And it, you know, Brian mentioned it there. If we take Tom, for instance, a couple of years ago, one bad event would affect his head, and that was Tom Dunn. The real changing of Tom was actually last year for me at the Strongest Man on Earth, where he did badly in the log, but he composed himself and he came back fighting right to the end. And now Tom, for me, is no longer just a world's strongest man expert. He is a legitimate threat in every single competition that he does. He's got the talent, but he has that experience now as well. And you can see a more mature approach to the way Tom does things. In the past, it was a bit of a confidence thing. When he's on a roll, he's great, but one bad event could cost him. We've seen that with Evan as well in the past, where one event can start to get into his head. He is becoming better now at putting together a full contest. Mitch Hooper's very good at it. Thor has tremendous experience. Obviously, you know, there's other athletes in there that are very experienced as well. So I think that experience, when we get to this point of the competition, is going to be crucial.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, Lawrence, with Tom. And last year, I pulled him to the side and talked to him after that log event last year. Because I told him, I said, look, man, like, you know what kind of shape you're in, right? And you know what you're capable of. So this is literally your moment. It's your opportunity to fight back, like to show that you're capable of fighting back. And he did exactly that. I mean, his performance last year was incredible, really, right? Like, you got to take your hat off to the guy, because he could have cashed it in. Like, he could have, that was a tough moment for him. It really was. And I want to say that I was proud of him for fighting back the way he did. And maybe that was the turning point, for him. And maybe it's like, hey, man, like, because I told him, I said, Tom, you got 7 events left, man. 7 events in this contest, and 16 points are possible in every single event. So if you attack it like that and think of it that way, I said, you're not even close to out of it. Like, you can still fight back. And I said, you know what kind of events you've got coming up. So he was able to do that, and really fight back in a great way. And so, I think sometimes learning that, seeing it, building the confidence, like you said, is going to come through. And I think that you're going to see it, like you said, from an experience standpoint. It's putting it together to win, right? Like, it's not just like, you're knocking on the door, whatever. I think at this point you'll see that play out, and who can win. And then, it's again, like the question, with Hofthor to a certain extent is, what does he need to do at this point? And if he's knocking on that door, if we're in a hot battle with 3 or 4 guys, who can do what, especially going into the final event. So I think it's going to be fascinating. I think it's going to be truly,
Oh, it's going to be fun.
It's going to be.
So, if you guys are interested in checking out more details, we are building up to this event, getting close. All the guys are training hard, and it's quite literally it's just gonna be a spectacle of strength, and the events, the competitors. I just don't know if it can get much better. So if you're a fan of strongman, you want to come, you want to be a part of it, you want to check it out, we'll have a full live stream. Click the link below the video, check it out. Appreciate you guys. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. And man, countdown's on.